Now, South Korea retaliated against Japan on Monday in a diplomatic and trade dispute.
Between the two of them, I think can damage both economies, and that could have a serious impact on world economic growth.
Now, you wrote an op-ed on the Washington Post, and we've had to read through that. And I have a basic idea of what you think, but I'd like for you to lay out what you think is at the root of this trade/diplomatic dispute that it seems to be now.
Right, and I think clearly the root of the problem is more than any kind of specific trade move or the specific, issues that you're seeing now. I think the real root of the problem lies in the long-standing history of mutual antagonism between Japan and Korea, which goes back decades. I think, yes, there's some problems that are created by these tit-for-tat moves, and it exacerbates the economic frictions, and that's sort of the immediate problem. But I think one of the reasons that there's so much emotion that you see being expressed by both Koreans and Japan about these issues, are not just because of these economic moves. I think they're related to the fact that Japan still hasn't shown very much contrition for for decades of colonialism in Korea. It still hasn't really come to terms in many ways with wartime atrocities.
Right. As an historian and expert in international relations, what is your view on Japan's argument that the 1965 treaty has resolved and compensated for all issues regarding its colonization of the Korean Peninsula?
I think that that's absolutely not true, and I think that for a couple of reasons. First of all, if you look back at 1965, at that time, there still wasn't complete awareness of all of the victims of Japanese colonialism. For instance, for comfort women, they still felt somewhat reluctant to come forward at the time and to talk about what had happened to them for a variety of different reasons. And so in 1965, first of all, we didn't know about all of the people who had been victimized by Japanese colonialism. And so, of course, the treaty couldn't take into account all of the people who had been the victims of Japanese colonialism. Another reason, I think, though, is even broader than that. I think it's not only about the treaty. It's about broader changes that need to happen in how Japan sees its actions during World War II. I think Japan is very different than Germany. I'm actually a person of Jewish heritage, but I feel no hostility toward Germany today because Germany has shown much more contrition for its actions during World War II. It's built memorials to the Holocaust. It's made it very clear that it has remorse for what happened during World War II. I think in Japan's case, you don't see that. You don't see public official memorials to the victims of Japan's wartime atrocities. I think, if anything, you see the opposite, where younger generations of Japanese are less and less aware of Japan's wartime history, and I think this is being encouraged in many ways by Shinzo Abe's government. And I think the situation has, in many ways, gotten a lot worse during the last 5 years. And I think that's also one of the reasons why South Korea's frustrations with Japan and with Abe's government have gotten, more to become larger and larger during the last few years.
Absolutely. I think Germany's continuing to educate its younger generation of its atrocities is something that we can all look up to and perhaps learn from. Now, is it possible for South Korea and Japan to come to an agreement before the burgeoning trade war ripples throughout not only this region but global economies?
Right, and I think what I hope will happen is that they can come to a short-term agreement where they undo some of the sanctions and some of the other economic retaliation measures that they've implemented during the last few days and the last few weeks. So I think the first thing that would have to happen is sort of that kind of an agreement where you just get the two economies interacting again and functioning, and have trade between the two countries flowing smoothly again. But I think that that's only going to be a short-term patch. I think looking ahead to the longer term, there needs to be a deeper reconciliation between Japan and South Korea over these historical issues, because if there isn't, you're only going to get other conflicts. It could be conflicts over trade. It could be conflicts over dokdo. It could be other kinds of political conflicts. But there can be, so many other, realms in which you could see more conflict between Japan and South Korea if there is not a deeper reconciliation between the two countries, and if Japan doesn't do more to try to educate its own younger generation about the atrocities of the past, and to show more genuine contrition to Koreans, to Chinese, to other people who were hurt under Japanese colonialism and during the Second World War.
Well, Dr. Gregg Brazinsky, professor of history and international relations at the George Washington University, many thanks for your insights this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you again for having me.